So today I'd like to talk about how to develop spiritual endurance. And when I started thinking about this subject, I was reminded of a movie that I've seen called Hidalgo, which is an American Indian name, and it's the name of a horse. And this horse was very famous for endurance racing, and was even invited at one point, initially in the American West, but was eventually, in fact, I think he was a part of Wild Bill Cody's roadshow about the American West and the American Indians and such. But he was invited to this great race in Arabia, which was considered to be the greatest endurance race in the world. And the thing is that the Arabians were very they had the best horses, and they were insulted if others thought that their horses might be as good. And the Arabians were consciously bred over many hundreds of years of lineage, and they were consciously bred for endurance. And the Hidalgo, the Arabians were insulted that somebody could claim that this Mustang, this Indian Mustang, this horse that was a mixed breed, that was not a purebred horse. And it was insulting to them that anybody, because Hidalgo was advertised by Bill Cody, Wild Bill Cody, as the greatest endurance horse of all time. So the Arabians wanted, to race this horse, and they had a very, disdain, very arrogant attitude towards the horse, and thought that it was unworthy. And of course, this horse in the end beat all of the other horses and won. And it makes you think, we in our minds we think that the biggest and the strongest guy is going to win the fight. But that is often not the case. And everybody loves the long shot, the one that's least likely to win that wins. So, well, how did this least likely one win? There's a great story, I know some of you know this story, but Yoganandaji used to tell it, and Grignanaji did as well, about, of course, Narada. Whenever there's a good story, somehow in the Indian literature, there's Narada's involved. And Narada was talking to God one day and basically, asked him who his greatest devotee was. And so God said, well, why don't you go out and look? Go find this great devotee. So Narada went on a journey to find the greatest devotee. And he traveled all over and met so many people, and eventually he came back to God to report what he saw. And God said, okay, well, tell me, what did you see? And he said, well, I have to sort of give you the best and the worst. Let me just, tell it to you straight. The greatest guy that I met was this old anchorite. He was underneath a tree, been there for 80 years, doing extreme austerity. I couldn't believe all the crazy things he did to strengthen himself and to shun the world and to, prove his discipline and dedication. And God said, who? He says, oh, don't you know this guy? And he described him. No, doesn't come to mind. And God says, well, who else do you see? He says, oh, well, the other end of the scale, of course, is this fellow who I saw one day he was digging holes for the fence posts, and he dug a hole and he had the post. He was trying to put it in the hole, but he couldn't get it in there because he was drunk, and he kept trying to get the post in the hole, but he couldn't aim it in the right direction, and so he was blaming you, Lord. He was saying, well, Lord, why can't you do this? You got to, get it in there. What's the problem? He was cursing you, Lord. He was blaming you for his own drunkenness. And as soon as Narada made it clear who he was talking about, God started to laugh. Oh, yeah, I know him. And Narada was confused. He said, well, how can you know this drunk guy and you don't know the old anchorite? He said, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you go back and see them and tell them both. Tell them that I'm busy, passing 100 elephants through the eye of a needle. And when I'm done, I'll come. And Narada says, okay, I'll go. I'll do it. So he goes and he comes to the anchorite. And the old anchorite's there. And he sees Narada and says, hey, Narada, tell me, what did the Lord say? Narada says, well, the Lord says that he'll be here as soon as he's done passing 100 elephants through the eye of a needle. And the old anchorite says, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. What is God doing passing elephants through the eye of a needle? I've been wasting my whole life. Well, I got to go get to town and enjoy myself while I still can. And Narada was shocked. He didn't expect that. So then Narada went and saw the drunk guy, and he was still drunk. And he was still trying to get that post into the hole, and he was still cursing God for not getting it done. But when the drunk guy saw Narada, he stopped. He said, oh, Pop, tell me, what does God have to say? And Narada said, well, God says that he'll be here as soon as he's done passing 100 elephants through the eye of a needle. And Narada's expecting disappointment. But immediately, this man throws his post to the ground and he raises his arms and he begins to dance in ecstasy. God is coming. God is coming. God is coming. This story is maybe an exaggeration, but it tells us something about an attitude that we need to have if we want to make it all the way through this incarnation in the best possible way, in the way that brings us closest to God. And that is that you can't look at the reality of your spirituality on what's on the outside, how it looks on the outside. You can't say, well, the person who serves in the temple is more likely to be a saint than the person who serves in the marketplace. And we have all kinds of preconceptions about what our discipleship should look like. And so then most of us sets these preconception standards that, for example, out in the path of Kriya Yoga, we practice Kriya Yoga. And we set, okay, you should do your Kriya practice every day. And I think that it's prescribed that you should try to do 108 Kriyas in the morning and 108 Kriyas in the evening. This would be considered to be a serious, somebody who's really serious about attaining self-realization in this lifetime. And yet the reality is that there's very few people who actually do 108 Kriyas twice a day, every day. And, it's easy to say, my chances aren't too good. And we have the preconception about what is the combination of things that we need to do in order to do the best that we can do. You remember, we're under a certain handicap here. God made the creation, and God did a good job. And the creation is designed to distract us. Master once described the spiritual life as running a race, a horse race, in fact. And the thing is that all of the people on the horses are racing, and they're doing tricks while they do it. But you see all the horses on the track, and some of them are really going forward, but some of them are going backwards. And some of them start slow but speed up, and some of them start fast and slow down. Everybody who's done anything to do with endurance knows that you have to pace yourself. But before you talk about pacing, you have to talk about preparation. If you know you're going on a journey, what do? You pack. You prepare the things that you are going to need for this journey. Well, there's certain things that we need for the spiritual journey. And there's one that is like this fellow who was the drunken guy, who had the most essential ingredient in the spiritual life, which actually is not Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga is like the super energizer, but you can't do Kriya Yoga without this most essential quality, and that is devotion, a dedicated devotion, love. You see, when we like somebody, then we will spend time with them, a little bit of time, but we might spend time with someone else too. And maybe we won't see them for a while. Where if we really love somebody, if we really, then we seek every opportunity to be with them. And another aspect of this is that when you talk about great athletes, when you talk about the thing that separates the person who's technically proficient and the winner is heart. Now, heart is both it's love, but it's determination as well. There's no one more determined than a mother to protect the child. There's a certain thing that comes with this devotional consciousness, this unwillingness to give up. If you remember, there was a story in Autobiography of a Yogi when Yoganandaji was a young man, and him and a friend decided that they were going to meditate until Krishna came to them. And they started at sunset, and Mukunda was determined, Yoganandaji, he was determined that he would sit there until Krishna came. The other fellow started off with enthusiasm, but hour after hour they sat there. And as time went by, they had to keep going, and suddenly it was almost dawn. And the other fellow said, "Oh, Krishna's not coming, let's go get some sleep." And that was the point. That was the point at which it was determined what was going to happen. And Mukunda said, "No, I will not give up." And then Krishna appeared. And then the other fellow, Mukunda says, "He's here." But the other guy couldn't see him. He'd given up. And then, of course, Master blessed him, and he could also see Krishna. Those moments in life, those moments where they tip the scale from great, here the guy was there for 10, 11 hours, pat the guy on the back. That's a great effort. But there's a point at which we have to recognize that it isn't enough. Just showing up in life is a big deal. Just coming and being in the positive environment is a great deal. It's better than the average person. The average person never shows up for spiritual greatness. But if you want to get the most out of it, then you have to do that extra amount. And, you know, why do we have marriage? That could be, I suppose, a big subject, but the thing that I'm thinking of right now is there's a point in life which you have to make a commitment. You have to say, I'm going to sign up for this, and I'm going to do it for the rest of my life. And this is really something that in many modern societies today, this level of commitment is really not part of our culture. Modern culture, which is selfishness oriented, is basically, I'll only do it as long as I think I'm having a good time. And if I'm not having a good time, forget it, I'm done. And, well, we have the freedom to do that, but the end result is that we don't achieve that which we can achieve. And the spiritual life is essentially the only purpose of life. And if you think about well, let's say if you were invited to a big banquet, really the royal banquet, just absolutely every great food was going to be there, and you're hungry, you know, you haven't eaten in a while, you feel that strong urge to eat, so you go to the banquet hall, but outside the banquet hall there's a vendor on the street. You know, I'm really hungry. But I'm going to a big banquet. But no, I think I'll have a little snack. So you get yourself a little snack. And you know, you eat this little guy, then you eat that little guy, and then you eat it. And the end result is that oftentimes you never actually get to the banquet hall. So, oh, I'm full, no point in going. The banquet's over. Maybe you eat on the street for so long the banquet's over. Or you get to the banquet but you can't eat because you're full. And maybe even you're sick. You're overfull. And this is the way that life distracts us from our spiritual success, is to put out the appetizers. So if you think about the things that we do in order to increase our connection spiritually, we come to satsang, we chant, we meditate, we read spiritual books, we spend time with other spiritual people. But how many things pop up in life to distract us from that? The things that that in the moment seem more important. Or for some reason, the mind says, well, I know I should go to satsang, but my relatives go. Or there's this show on TV, I got to see this show. Or there's a lecture somewhere that I want to see. Or I need to prepare for tomorrow. Something's going on. The list is endless. And any one of those things could be worthy of your attention at some point in life. But if you were to have a job somewhere and and you wanted to be successful at that job, you would assume that your boss would expect a certain amount of productivity from you. And so you would, commit yourself to it, or you expect that you might get fired one day. Well, the good news is that God won't fire us. We're going to be on the job until we do our job. But if we don't do our job, we won't be as successful as we might be. Well, okay, that's okay. We don't have to make it in this lifetime. But when we become distracted, we suffer. And the interesting thing is that when we commit ourselves to the spiritual life, somehow all the other stuff works out. in spite of the fact that we didn't do it in the traditional way, as long as we did it to the best of our ability. If you remember, there's another story in Autobiography of a Yogi when Yoganandaji was going to college, and he didn't like college. He didn't like to study. And he spent most of his school years in Sri Teshwar's ashram instead of in the classroom. And so when the tests came at the end, people would laugh at him, but God saved him and gave him a fellow who helped him to pass the test. And this is an understanding that doesn't support irresponsibility, but it understands that when you commit yourself to the highest truth, the lesser truths fall into line. If you think about it, if you wanted to be successful in anything in life, then you would maybe need to be mentored. Somebody who could be your guide, your coach, your helper. And that person, you'd want them to be like the best. Maybe like they were really smart and they were really rich and they had a real good history of success in business. Then you'd want to partner with them in business. Well, in life, there's no one more successful than God. And God has sent us the mentor of the Guru and given us the tools for success. So we have everything that we need to be spiritually successful, but while we're going down the path of self-realization, we have to realize that there are a wide variety of ways in which we can become distracted. And so we have to determine, how are we going to endure through the ups and downs and the turns, the twists and turns of our lives in a way that is going to keep us on the path. There was, Yoganandaji said that his two most advanced male disciples, the highest was Rajarsi Janakananda, who the Master said attained absolute freedom in this lifetime. So that was his last time that he had to come back into the creation. He was completely free. But Rajarsi Janakananda, he lived in Oklahoma. No, that's not right. It was, where was it, Missouri? Now I can't think of it. Somewhere in the Midwest. Maybe Kansas City. No, I can't remember. But he lived in the Midwest. But he regularly came out to the ashram. And he would spend time with Yogananda. But Oliver Black, he was the next guy, and he was in Detroit, Michigan. And he didn't come to visit Master. He was very advanced. But Master said one day, Oliver's bogging down, and he doesn't know why. And then Master said, but because he doesn't come. He doesn't participate. He doesn't, in this case, he didn't come to spend time with Master. And there's something that happens. There's a tradition at Ananda Village in America, and every year there's a week dedicated to spiritual renewal. It's called Spiritual Renewal Week. And for many years, Kriyanandaji would do, every day he would do a class. And over the years, gradually, others began to help with that task. But he would basically, Monday morning, 10 a.m., 2-hour class. And then other activities in the afternoon, and then satsang in the evening. And every day all week, and then on Saturday, we'd have Kriya Yoga initiation. And it would end the next Sunday at the Sunday service. And this week of dedication to the spiritual life was so magnetizing that it gave you power for the whole rest of the year. Spiritual New Week was just like an infusion of inspiration and an energization of your whole spiritual perspective. And the interesting thing that we noticed over the years, because yes, conscious participation is a factor, an important factor, but people who just showed up were blessed. If you just came and participated in what the group was doing, people had amazing transformations during that week in terms of how they felt inside. And this is an important way that we can maintain our spiritual life over the long distance of a lifetime. At least once a year, get into a very strong spiritual environment. Now, we encourage people to take personal seclusion, but this is kind of a group seclusion. And it's very easy for people who meditate to think, I'll just meditate by myself. It's not the same. There's very few people who can generate the same level of magnetism by themselves as they can with a group. And so I encourage you to meditate with other people regularly. It's for your own upliftment, but it's also for your it's your service. If you're meditating well and you have a good meditation in a group, you've helped that group to become uplifted. And if you're having a poor meditation, then the others are going to be lifting you. But that group magnetism, there's a very famous quote by Jesus, which is, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them. And this is this group energy, a principle. Because, of course, God is everywhere all the time. One person praying, God's there. Yeah. But specifically said where 2 or 3, there's a group energy. And this is a very important principle. If we want to maintain our endurance spiritually, it's very advantageous to stay connected to the group energy that's going in the same direction. Now, that connection can look like a bunch of different things. Each one of us has our own relationship. If you have a big family, these people over here tend to spend more time together than those people over there. But the important part of this is that we become aware of how we're living, how we're relating to the group energy, and then to pay attention to what we're doing. Because it's so easy in a moment of kind of relaxed mental vigilance to say, oh, well, I don't need to do that today. Or I'm going to take a vacation. Now, I would say that taking vacations is a good idea. I remember many times over the years that, a couple things. One is that when things become too intense, there's a tendency for people to think, I've got to push through. And there's a time for that. Like in the story about Krishna meditating, but there's also a time in endurance. You have to pace yourself. So I remember one time when I was in seclusion with Krishnaji for an extended period of time, and he said to myself and another person over there, he said, you guys need to take a day off. He wrote a note, he was in silence. He says, you guys should take tomorrow off. And I went, what is he talking about? He said, you guys need to let off some steam. He could sense that we were building up inside, that we were trying really hard, and there was a lot of intensity to what we were doing. And there was a point at which that if you are running a race and you push too hard, you may injure yourself and slow yourself down rather than speed yourself up. You have to pace yourself. So in the spiritual life, there's a time to push. Last night I mentioned this to some people, but in the West we say, make hay while the sun shines. Right? When you feel enthusiastic spiritually, run. Really give it your best shot. But recognize that on a rainy day, when you're not feeling that great, Go sit on the porch, drink some tea, take a little vacation. But don't let that vacation turn into, oh, I went in the house and I turned on the television and I didn't come out for 3 months. Which happens to people. Another aspect of this is that we need to develop an understanding that our commitment to the spiritual life has got to be rooted in the deepest levels of our being. If it's only on the surface, our chances of spiritual success are minimized. When we talk about heart, we're talking about the very core of our being. And we need to create that inner relationship, and this should come from the very beginning. Before you enter the race, you have to show up at the track, and then you have to do the preparation work. For many people in the spiritual life, we call it the honeymoon period. The period where you come onto the path, maybe you read autobiography of a yogi, you feel inspired, then you take some meditation classes, and maybe you have a good meditation. And I'll tell you, just one good meditation, when you have a good meditation and you feel the presence to some degree, it feels like it's never going to go away. It's like, okay, I've arrived. But it diminishes, because our minds become attracted to other things. And over time, what we need to do is continue to train and go deeper and deeper. And this is where Kriya Yoga is so valuable, is it takes you deep into the inner stillness, deep into the silence, deep into spirit. The deeper you go that way, the more power you have to not be distracted by the things that go on in life around us. But even still, all the great saints go through testing. All of the great saints, the closer you get, you have fewer problems, but those problems can be quite dramatic. And in this way, there are many stories of what's called the dark night of the soul. In which case, there's a story about Rajarsi Janakananda who went through a period of time where he couldn't go into samadhi. He didn't feel the bliss. And he was smelling bad odors. He'd go into a room and it would smell bad. And it's interesting, a smell is a very subtle power, and it can become quite refined when you advance spiritually. And he was despondent. He was really, it was like he was confused. He didn't know what was going on. And if you remember, Jesus was tested on the cross, and there was a point at which he said, "Lord, why hast thou forsaken me?" In that moment, he was drawn into the humanity of it, and for that moment, he was caught. Not clearly, he wasn't pulled down, because it was just a moment. I remember it was in 2004 in December. I came from America to India, and Kriyanandaji was here, and I hadn't seen him in some time, and his health was deteriorating, and he was having trouble walking, and a little unsteady. And we had just purchased, the house that became Guru Kripa, and in Gurgaon. And so he brought a group of us over. And we brought some carpets, and he wanted to see how they were going to fit and such. So, but they were rolled up, and somehow and somehow it was my fault. There was a carpet covering the doorway to the bedroom, and he decided to show us the bedroom. He walked up to the carpet, And it never occurred to me that he wouldn't step over it. But the next thing I knew, he was, doing a Superman down towards the ground. And I was like, and so he was thrown down to the ground, he bumped his head, and of course we all rushed in and we helped him to get into a chair. And it was the most amazing thing. And I've seen this happen before, but not ever quite like this. Because of the physicality of the falling down, he was pulled down into the body. And he was like totally human. He was totally like, there's this old man, and he's bruised, and he's breathing hard, and he's weak and shocked physically. And he was like, and then I watched his eyes, and it was like a power turned on and went, zzz, and suddenly he was just like, and he made a joke. He was just like totally okay. And we can be drawn into this world. We have to recognize that our spirit is completely separate from this physical world reality. But we have to pay attention to, are we going to allow this experience outwardly to disconnect us from that inner spirit? And in terms of the spiritual life, if we want to achieve our greatest success spiritually, we have to develop this mechanism for we call it a knee-jerk reaction. They even the doctors do that. You hit the knee thing and the leg goes out. We have knee-jerk reactions to life. We need our knee-jerk reaction to be towards God, towards the Guru. And the development of this reactive process starts in the very beginning. So if we want to increase our chances of success, we need to go through a period of serious spiritual training. And for each of us, it might look different, but we have to go through that point where instead of being a person who would like to feel God's presence, we have felt God's presence to some degree. And instead of being a person that wants to be transformed spiritually, we have been transformed spiritually to some degree, to the point where we can experience the difference between looking at life from the mind personality through the senses point of view and from the spiritual point of view. When you feel that presence, when you have gone through some level of transformation, I don't mean samadhi, I mean where you've had an experience over a period of time where you have felt what is to you God's presence, and that it has affected your life to the point where your knee-jerk reaction to life is to spirit rather than to worldliness, selfishness. This is the foundation. We've got to get, it doesn't matter where we are now, we have to get to that point. And it's only once we get to that point that we can really say that we're firmly on the path. Because up till then, it's I want to be on the path. But once you've gone through that level of transformation, I'm a devotee. We have these ceremonies where we dedicate ourselves to God. And that's a marriage. It's a contract. It's a commitment. It's a point at which you say, I'm not going back. And we do that, we should do that, not based on, I hope this is true, but that I've traveled to this point and I've got momentum going in this direction. And then you really can make a commitment, and then you dedicate yourself to it. Just the way the mother would to the child. It's like you have children in this life, and you never stop being committed to that relationship under normal circumstances. When we dedicate ourselves to God and Guru, we can never look at that relationship and say, well, on the good days I'll do that. When I'm feeling good, yeah. But, I think I'll go take a 3-year vacation. Again, Narada was traveling with, I forget, was it with the Lord? Maybe it was Krishna, but it was the Lord. And they're going across the desert. And the Lord says, Narada, I'm thirsty. And they were talking about Maya, and Narada says, I don't understand Maya. I don't understand how people get stuck in this world. And so the Lord says, oh, well, Narada, look, I'm thirsty. Go get me a drink. There's a town over there. So Narada goes over to the town, and the next thing, Narada walks up to the door, and a beautiful woman is there. And they become friends, and he gets a job with Dad, and then they have kids, and then, I think they had 3 kids, come to think of it. And then one day there's a big storm, and a big flood, and everybody's getting washed away, and he suddenly is separated from everybody. All is lost. And he's somehow he's then lying on the sand, and the Lord's saying, Narada? Narada? And he woke up and went, oh, I understand, Maya. The power to be distracted, for the world to draw us in innocent things that in themselves aren't bad. But the end result is they keep us from the truth of life, God's presence. So endurance in the spiritual life is, Yoganandaji said, environment is stronger than willpower. This means that the more time, what are the 3 great gifts in life? A birth, an opportunity to grow, to be motivated spiritually, the guru, and satsang. Satsang, the fellowship, the environment in which we can become uplifted. These are considered to be the greatest gifts, is the opportunity and the environment in which to grow our spirits. So we have to find that endurance from our hearts, from our personal dedication. But the way to support that inner effort is with the Guru. And your dedicated devotion to the Guru, your commitment to that knee-jerk reaction. We've got to be in that space where our automatic reaction to anything that happens in life is to connect to Spirit and to see it from that point of view and to invite God to live through this life. And if we do that, the masters have promised that if we're loyal to this path until the end of the life, and not just with a membership card, but by cultivating as best we can this relationship, then that no matter what we've accomplished in this life, one of the masters will be there when we pass and guide us on to whatever is next for us. And this is an incredible promise. If we can dedicate ourselves to the spiritual life with 100% of our commitment, our sense of center, all things come from this point of connectedness. And if we just stand in that and don't give up on it, then only good things can happen. Only good things can happen from that. And if we allow things to distract us, and again, don't be afraid to take a vacation. In fact, Ananda lifestyle, over the years, we've changed jobs like we changed coats. It's unusual in the early years for a person to stay at one job for more than 2 or 3 years. Over the years, that amount has changed, but there's still been a lot of hopping around because that can keep it fresh. So if you feel like you're in a rut, you know, it's the same thing, and you're feeling like nothing new and energizing is happening, then you know, it's like when you go to the stadium to watch the cricket match, and you've always been sitting in this one seat, go sit in a different seat. See it from a different angle. Your service, your devotion, the books that you read, the things that you do, freshen it up. So if you took seclusion in Rishikesh one year, take it somewhere else. The best thing is to take you know, Spiritual Renewal Week, which I don't know if we've in the past we've had you know, 3-day programs around Master's Mahasamadhi, and I think maybe in Pune they've done some what we call renewal programs. But it's something that we will want to develop more in India, so that we have this this intensity, group intensity, for a number of days, and it really is very powerful. And then, of course, I highly recommend the Christmas meditation. I know it seems daunting to sit for 8 hours, but you know, we had a fabulous meditation this year, and it really is a way to deep charge your spirit. And all of the things that we do, it's just about participation. And anytime you think, I'm going to do that instead of connecting, then you should question yourself and say, is this a short-term vacation, or is this a long-term distraction? And if we can use that as a little bit of a guideline, it'll be very helpful. So we need to commit ourselves to the long race, to the long run, till the end of life. And when we really commit ourselves to that, then incredible joy, peace, love, protection, and divine presence will ever be a part of every experience that you have in life.